I'm now happy to introduce Livia Ortensi, who leads the statistical unit at ISMO, being also a senior assistant professor in demography at the Department of Statistical Sciences in the University of Bologna. Please, Livia, let us know more about migration in Italy from a statistical perspective.
So thank you, Buia. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for giving me the floor. I will, first of all, share my screen here. So I hope everything is working. So in these few minutes, I will illustrate and discuss the latest data about migration, trying to disentangle trends that were in place before the pandemic onset and after the pandemic onset. Indeed, the pandemic completely changed the world as we knew, at least in the last year, and is expected to impact on economy and migration, at least in the short term. However, as we will see, despite a public discourse, as said also by Dr. Gaudina, still very focused on the so-called rhetoric of invasion, data shows that Italy is mostly dealing with other problems, such as demographic decline and labor force shortage. To put the recent data into the right perspective, I'll briefly remind how Italy emerged as a country of immigration starting from the 70s, with massive inflows peaking especially in the first decade of the new century. Even after the 2008 economic crisis, flows reduced, but not as much as in other countries with similar histories, such as Spain, for example. So as 1st January 2020, around 6 million people staying in Italy are foreign, and they represent 9.9% of the present population, so a very important part of our population nowadays. Most of them are regular in their legal status, are residents, and are long-term migrants. And 8.7% is estimated to be undocumented. What is most significant is that for the first time, as of January 2020, so before the pandemic onset, we see a reduction in the number of foreigners. And as we will see, it is not only the consequence of a rise in a positive trend in the number of naturalization, but we have many signs that Italy is becoming less and less attractive to foreign citizens. Besides, if we see the number of first resident permits is issued in 2009, so before the pandemic onset, we see that the number reduced. And if we look at the new permits broken down by reason, we see that family reasons are prevalent, as happens to countries with a long and mature history of migration. So Italy is now a country of migration, not a new country anymore. We also see a reduction in the permits released for asylum-related reasons, and I will talk about this more in depth later. So before the onset of the pandemic, the number of third country nationals entering in Italy was reduced comparing to the previous years. The pandemic onset, of course, impacted on migration, and but we saw that there was a reduction even before the COVID pandemic was, let's say, exploded in Italy after February 2020. The National Institute for Statistics made a huge effort to produce data for the first semester of 2020, and we see an overall drop of new inflows of third country nationals of more than 50% in the first 6 months. So a very important reduction, but it was a trend that was in place before. The trend in irregular migrants is also very interesting because according to the last ISMU available estimate, we estimate a reduction in the number of undocumented migrants present despite the effect of the 2018 security laws that, as we will see, increased the asylum rejection rates. As you can see from the slide, Italy has an history characterized by the high proportion of undocumented among the migrants, especially during the 90s. And their number decreased after the 2008 crisis and was slowly rising since 2013. The sudden decrease before the pandemic suggests a drop in the opportunities in the informal labor market even before, and follows the trend of regular migrants that we have just seen, whose number was also corrected after the 2017 and 18 rolling census found many resident migrants have left Italy. So after the census, we find out that legal migrants were less than we expected. Many had already left Italy for, we don't know, their country of origin or to migrate onward. As for 2020, we have also data on sea arrivals, land border crossing, and asylum requests. Sea arrivals have been relatively low in 2018 and 2019, much lower than the so-called refugee crisis of 2015 and 2019. We see that in 2020 numbers rose again, even if they are very far from the peaks as I said, 2015, 2017. However, it is a fact that this type of flows follow different logic compared to those driving economic and family migrants. We cannot forget that especially migrants crossing Libya arrive in Italy after long journeys and are exposed to violence and torture. And as these journeys are very long, many of them may have left their country of origin before the onset of the COVID-19, so they found in between and try to cross the Mediterranean all the same. What happened to those who apply for asylum? For those who are not familiar with the Italian law, in 2018, we had a new law that ended humanitarian protection, and this led to a further increase in rejection rates that were already increasing. What I want to stress is that beside the overall increase in rejections, the effect of the law that was recently amended is still poorly understood, especially in its effect at the nationality levels. As you can see from the graph, some nationality were not affected from the law. They didn't see rejection rise, but they instead had a higher access to the refugee status. Other nationalities, for example, Ukraine, Egypt, or El Salvador, had rejection rate peaking very fast. Also, as a reaction to the pandemic, Italy promoted an amnesty, another one, that was meant to address the shortage of agricultural workers in the first place. In its effect, however, the amnesty were very similar to a classical Italian amnesty, with most application in the domestic and care work service. If we look at the profile of the applicants and knowing how segmented by ethnicity is the Italian job market, it seems quite evident that application in these sectors are probably meant to overcome barriers to other jobs imposed by the amnesty itself. All the same, Italy received around 200,000 requests, and again, it was not a huge success, stressing the reduced attractivity of Italy, especially after, in this case, the COVID crisis. So some take-home messages. We see basically two different trends. One is prevalent and has to do with the general population and sees a reduction of attractivity of Italy. We cannot say if this will last, but surely it's not all about the COVID crisis. It was something that was at work before. The other has to do with humanitarian flows that are instead rising again, and even more in 2021, even with levels that are very far from those of the refugee crisis. We saw how the law impacts on rejection rates, and we will evaluate the effect of the 2020 amendment that opened again the ground for receiving permits of stay. As for irregular migration, it was already decreasing and is expected to drop in the next estimation for the next year due to the amnesty on one side and the economic crisis on the other. But again, this is following a trend that was already in place. So thank you for your attention. I think.
Thank you, Livia. Thank you for having brought us along the last available data. It's always interesting to see things from numbers perspective. Now is the time for the question and answer. So if there are in the audience someone who might want to have a question that Livia could answer, this is the time for writing it in the YouTube or Twitter chat box. So please have your question. While we are waiting, I will take the advantage of being the chair of the session to pose a question from my side. It's clear you said that Italy is not attractive as it was before. And this could be, it's a little bit ambivalent as a reality. As a demographer, which are the expected impacts of this reduction on migration flows to Italy on the Italian population as a whole? And which are the consequences, in your opinion, of this reduction on migrants themselves? I mean, on those who are willing to enter Europe but are impeded to do.
So on the population, the Italian population on the whole, I think the effects are very clear. So on one side, the first and most important problem is the labor shortage, because we already know that Italy is expected to have a decline in population of working age, and this decline will happen even with sustained migration flows. So if migration become less important, this problem that we are sure we will have will become more and more important. On the others, at the same time, what we can expect if migrants, let's say, are less important in Italian population, it's a problem about aging, because we are a very old country, and without families, with less families, with less children, with less second generation, our destiny is to be even more a country of all people. For those who are willing to enter Italy, well, it all depends on law on one side, because if they are admitted legally, they will find an environment that in this very moment can be complicated by the economic crisis. So this is indeed a problem. If they enter irregularly, they are expected to be even more vulnerable, because we see that irregular migrants that were in Italy before the COVID crisis were declining. So this is a clear sign that the black and gray economy was not doing well, and with the COVID crisis, they are expected to be even more vulnerable. Our impression is that was also strengthened by the results of the amnesty, is that you are willing to invest on Italy, on your future in Italy, if you have a family, a community, a network that can possibly help you. But if you are from, so we had Pakistanis, people from Bangladesh, big communities are still investing in Italy. New communities, for example, those we were expecting to see some among the main nationality that are about that are at the top of asylum seeker requests, and they were not among the main applicants for the amnesty. So this means that these are communities, smaller communities, new communities for Italy. These are not investing their future in Italy, not now at least. So I think it's also very important the role of formal and informal safety nets for communities in this very moment.
Thank you, Livia. It's very interesting. It seems like just a moment ago we were afraid of being invaded, while now we are afraid of remaining not attractive, not enough attractive. We have a question from the audience. The first one is, are migrants from Georgia, specifically those employed in the domestic sector, somehow visible in your statistic?
Are visible surely in the among the people that is registered in the population register, so we can count them if they are regular migrants, and if they have a permit of stay, indeed we count this, and if they are resident even more. As for irregular migrants, we have estimation by country of origin or by area. Georgia is not one of the main communities in Italy, so it's difficult to have the detail for this country. Usually is not provided because it's a secondary community compared to other from the same area, but they are included, of course.
Thank you. So yes, the Georgian people are those small community who are not likely to invest in Italy.
Maybe it can be.
Okay, thank you. And we have another question. This is more methodological. There's someone who is asking how you count regular migrants when you provide your figures. Specifically, the figures on regular migrants are including also refugees or asylum seekers?
Yeah, of course. Refugees are migrants with a permit of stay, so they are, say, fully counted. But also asylum seekers, because they are counted in the regular population because they have a regular. They are staying legally in Italy until their application is under investigation. So yeah, they are counted, and they sometimes they are considered illegal if they have a first instance rejection, but it's not like this, because if you apply against a negative decision, you are still a regular migrant until your claim is examined. So yeah, asylum seekers are legal migrants indeed. The difference can be for those who arrive on the, let's say, Italian shores. They are counted in among the sea arrivals, but if they do not present any asylum claim, they are not counted as legal migrants, because they do not present an asylum claim. In the moment they present an asylum claim, they are legal, at least until they have an answer to their application.
Okay, so even those who would be eligible but do not start the procedure, they are considered not regular. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because they are on the Italian territory without a valid permit of stay, and not even for asylum request.
Okay, thank you very
Sometimes
much.
it's a strategy. They want to just transit through Italy and not being fingerprinted to be in the Dublin regulation. Of course, it can be a strategy to remain illegal because you don't want really to stay in Italy. You just want to go through and go elsewhere.
A dangerous strategy, but yes, it could be. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Livia,